Shall we have Bienvenido's presentation, and I certainly hope you can all stay for it. I will be staying for it. And then we'll conclude with that. I had some PowerPoint slides of a little Weiss history, and
You could stand back to the camera.
I'll stand back. Oh, I gotta be on the.
Yeah, besides this.
Okay. I was wondering, could we take about a 5-minute break because we have crudité and some little finger sandwiches that I don't even recall ordering. But since they're here, let's eat them for 5 minutes, then we'll hear from Bienvenido. Okay.
Yeah, so is my daughter.
Yeah, I'll say goodbye to
I'm taking her all over the world. And I've always got a little music video. And showing her doing Indian rain dances. Skiing in Colorado. That would be great. That's great. Well, Tasha goes to Macario, Tasha goes to Tish Indian festival. Tasha goes over. Tasha goes to I used to do it all. Now she's going to be 15 on Halloween. Well, I don't know if she's going to like it. And she's a blessing most of the time. But sometimes she's sick and well, now the cow is out of the barn. She's like, now she takes it as her birthright. That she can. My brother. Well, Latasha's an older child. Is he back in Hill Country? Never. Oh, okay, yeah. So he's back. You said he's still there. Yeah. All right. That's my world. Little days were those from before, and they transport you back to that era. And they said, well, the good old days were really the things
As youthful multitasking intensely.
Those right kind of remind me often it would be not doing something that takes attention to it. You have to do the slideshow. So horrible. had it for I'll put that.
Turns out it's easier just to bring somebody's computer. Much easier. Or you can write
Let's finish ourselves.
Hey, let's get out of here. Come on. I don't know how long it's gonna take.
Sure, there's,
Where should I stay? Here?
the best would be, but you can wander kind of as long as you're sort of
Sound test.
That's not a bad idea, but the problem is they're very good. They're creative.
You're familiar with online
We'll start Okay. All right, let's resume. Now that the last finger sandwich has been consumed, let's resume. And Bienvenido Macario is one of the most loyal Weissers. He's been at every conference, I believe.
except one, 2006.
Oh, except 2006. He's been at I met him for the first time in 2001. I remember he was making a point about China, I think, in the question and answer session. And since then, Bienvenido joined us in Turkey. Well, he joined us in 2009 for our conference here. He joined us in Turkey in 2011. He's one of the very few California Weissers, together with Paul Pidlick and Masood. I must thank both of them. But I'm saying no, Bienvenido is one of the handful of California Weissers who made the trip to Adrian 2 years ago. And however, you're not a California Weisser. Yeah, you're a Carolina Weisser, but don't want to, right. But this is Bienvenido's first ever Weiss presentation, I believe.
Yes.
And so this is a historic moment, and he is from the Philippines, has lived in California for many years, for most of your life, I think. Haven't you been here? Yes. And so he'll be talking about developments in the Philippines, and I'll let him explain.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. We'll try to get out of here as soon as we can. Okay, I'll be talking about China mostly, and of course the Philippines mostly. Okay, so that's Steve Jobs saying it. You don't know what you want unless you see it, right? So he's famous here in Silicon Valley, so I thought I'd pick his quote. I don't know if you can see it very well, but this is the Philippines. It's really beautiful. The one on the right is in Palawan, near where Timothy Brown was once assigned. Mindoro or Palawan. There's Mindoro, and there's the underground river. So these are, you can see this on the internet, a lot of these tourist places. Okay, U.S. Philippine There are three wars that the U.S. and the Philippines got together, for better or for worse. Spanish-American War, World War II, and this war on terror. So I'll go along these lines. But a common mistake is the Philippines has never been a colony of the U.S. It's a U.S. territory, just like Puerto Rico, California, parts of California, and so on. It was purchased from Spain. So, 1934, the Depression, we were jettisoned. There were no referendum. We were not asked. In the same way, in 1946 and in 1986. Okay, there's how we got abandoned. So, because the hair hose cutting law says that it has to be approved by the Philippine Senate, next time around, the Philippine Independence Act, they didn't require it, so they could railroad the case and jettison, and they also placed limitations on Filipino immigration. And again, like I said, neither the Filipino people nor the American people had a voice in this decision. And one thing is, we have this pledge to the flag, and we say, one nation under God, indivisible, except for the Philippines, of course. So, okay, that. Look at this. These are the Native Americans. They are not citizens, but like Tim mentioned, they are U.S. nationals. Before World War II, there are only 29 sovereign and independent countries. Okay, I'm looking for Native American status. This is what I'm trying to acquire. And if you abandon it, I'm using the movie Dances with Wolves, when Kevin Costner's character lost his hat during the buffalo hunt, and he was trying to get it back. So the big Indian says he didn't want it. So his friend says, "Why don't you just give him something in return? Make it a trade." And that's the basis of what I'm trying to do. And this is what I'm trying to give the U.S. These are my papers. Number one, I forecasted the subprime meltdown and how it's gonna hit the prime, and the Great Recession that goes all around is still going on. The zero-sum game. On the real estate, Ben Bernanke came up with a recent book, and they were criticized why they did not see it coming. Well, I mean, modesty aside, I saw it coming all the time. What he didn't expect was how the subprime would infect the prime. That's easy. The bankers lump together subprime and prime loans, put it together and market it as one. That's what happened. And number three, zero sum game, saying like it's a four-card game. The winnings of one person is the total losses of all three. A perfect storm. That's the high interest rate, high health care cost, education, and the others, oil, interest rates, and strong dollar. Paper number eight. I'm just gonna rush through this one. Paper number eight is about the various different industries and understanding Ben Bernanke and the Federal Reserve Bank. Not a lot of people understand. Even in Ben Bernanke's book, he was very frustrated because he's being asked to go after the erring bankers. And he said, "We are not a law enforcer agency." A great recession on time of this. Okay, these are what I wanted to get. Secure Native American status, including my claims, which will be coming up soon. I want to get back my ancestral land. In real estate, owner-occupied properties are doesn't depreciate as much as rentals. It's obvious, right? It's a rule of thumb. Abandoned properties are usually trashed. Okay, here. This is the reality of American society. You don't, they never had what they had now until they petition it or they love it or they press for it. There you go. It's reality. You can cry and say, "Oh, they ignored me," but that's the way it is. This is the post about the headquarters, and this is what I wanted to ask the Wisers. I'd like permission to open up a headquarters in the West Coast in Newport Beach.
I have to correct you, Bienvenido. That was my idea for the villa in Tuscany.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Roy just had some. I think he found a couple of
Places.
links. That would. All we need is the. What was
Some
it?
money,
The free money. We need some of that free money.
Okay, I'll change that. And these are the treasure hunt that we're doing. Restitution because the so-called Philippine War is actually a genocide. 200,000 Filipinos or natives were killed, mostly from disease and starvation, up to a high estimate of 1.2 million. Only 4,000 soldiers in the US side and about 7,000 from the Filipino side, but mostly the civilians suffered. And the other one is the gold that was shipped out from the Philippines during World War II. This was well documented. And then my wife, who was an alumni of Stanford, earned her degree here. She explored all the geothermal resource areas, and now it's owned by ethnic Chinese and ethnic Spaniards. How did that happen? Now here's the where China will come in. In Spratly, there's 25 trillion cubic meters of natural gas, according to the U.S. Energy Information. So, and then there's well, here and there, a million here, a trillion there. So, not a lot, but we can use it, right? Is there a problem with the healthcare, education? Where's the money? Oh, I want to point out that in addition to the 20 million to see Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, Governor General William Taft came up with his own money to buy out the friar lands because he didn't like what he saw. So at first, when he asked how much are you willing to pay to sell your, he went to the Vatican asking the Pope, how much are you willing to sell all the friar lands in the Philippines? And they said five. Five? I'll give you six, 7 million. And he gave 6.9 million. Now, here we go. Yeah. That's the red lines. Is it red? The 9 dash lines is what China is claiming as their territory. And it's blocking the way, especially for like Australia. They have to go through that. And there are other claimants. Vietnam is all around that South China Sea. Dio Wang is a senator from China, I mean from Australia, born in China, but he says it's gonna be military might will settle this issue. He said that history doesn't matter. Doesn't matter history. It's who's got the bigger muscle is gonna settle it. He would emerge triumphant. He also justified the crackdown on the pro-democracy protesters, and then a lot of Australians didn't like that. So there we go. On April 28, 2014, last year, they talked about. There was a question about what do you think of China's aggression in the South China Sea, and President Obama said, "We have big business with China, so our goal is not to contain China. We're not going to stop them." That's what they said. And the president of the Philippines, Aquino III, said, those are just few rocks. They didn't say anything about the 25 trillion natural gas. Now, after he became president, he went to China and said that China is my ancestral land, not the Philippines. And it's nothing new. That's what his late mother, said also when she became president. And a lot of people believe that it was on this visit that Cory Aquino planned the removal of the bases, U.S. bases in the Philippines. They are saying if the U.S. military bases in Subic and Clark were still there, China will never make a move. So the first step is to remove the U.S. presence in the Philippines. And it did happen by 1991. So long before the Mount Pinatubo erupted, she was planning the removal of U.S. bases. This is how she did it. 1973, all territories belonging to the Philippines by historic or legal title. She removed that in the 1987 Constitution. But unfortunately, President Truman already made this proclamation that that is what belongs to the Philippines. Remember, the proclamation was signed on September 28, 1945, before the Philippines was granted, even if it's a sham, uh, independence in 1946, 4th of July. So I found this document from University of California, Santa Barbara. He was the first one post-war to extend the territorial boundaries. Yes. Now let's compare. That's what China's claiming this year. That was 1945. Are we going to go to war with China over that? Here's why my claim is over stratosphere all others. China did not exist in 1950. Malaysia did not exist until 1957. Singapore did not exist until 1965. Socialist Republic of Vietnam did not exist until 1976. There's a big problem. If China is not evicted from the Spratlys, they can use this as a basis to take over Hawaii. Why? We never bought Hawaii. And this is nothing new. It's nothing new. They took Tibet in 1950. They invaded, what do you call it, Uyghur in 1955. They went into Vietnam in 1979. This is nothing new. Somebody's, I think Anthony Agostino said something about appetites build up over while you eat. Something, and that's what's happening. Okay, there. If one day China should change her color and turn into a superpower, if she too should play the tyrant in the world and everywhere subject others to her bullying, aggression, and exploitation, the people of the world should identify her as a social imperialist, hegemon, expose it, oppose it, and work together with the Chinese people to overthrow it. Deng Xiaoping. We got a problem here. He's dead already. So now I'm gonna go to another area where when there's gold, when there's treasure, becomes a problem. So the Philippines is also part of our team supposedly for in this war, global war against terror. So there is one terrorist that they just neutralized last January 25, 2015. His name is Marwan. He has a 5 million bounty. This is a post that Professor Hilton uh, made on January 29, 2002. So he was saying that perhaps there's already some activity there. That was 13 years ago. Okay. Now that guy, the bomb maker, was the one behind the Bali bombings, and so many other bombings. They don't know. He's reported to have taught a lot of other bomb makers, and it's been there since 2002. Okay. Even after that bomber was killed and neutralized, the Philippine government under Aquino III formed a peace, what do they call it? Peace Council. The Bansang Moro Basic Law, they want to form an Islamic state in that area where there's a lot of riches, a lot of minerals. So they were waiting for some funding from Malaysia to promote the idea, lobby, so to speak. But there was a problem where it's coming from in Malaysia. There was a major rally in August, and it got wind up. The Swiss banking authorities found out about that. They froze the money. Okay, so they don't have the money that they needed to create that Bansang Moro Basic Law and create a Muslim state in the Philippines, southern Philippines. Because they don't have the money, so they went after the 5 million bounty for that bomber that was killed. And then this is where the problem started for right now. So because there were 44 police commandos that were killed in a 14-hour battle. When the U.S. found out about they're taking the credit from the 44 police officers that were killed, they came up with the LA Times report saying that Aquino deliberately tried to sabotage the whole operation so that it will delay the plans to give the U.S. access to the military bases. And they openly said it's very frustrating to work with Philippine security forces. It turned out Marwan was being. They came up with a very detailed information about the operation, everything about. They mentioned a lot of how the process was done, how they were able to identify that it was in fact the person that they were after. Meaning you're not entitled to the 5 million, somebody else. That's what the US government is saying. So they're saying that it's been a 13-year project going on, and that's how the police officers who survived. They were there for 14 hours, and they've been asking for reinforcement, and nothing came. This is the same thing. And this one started coming up. The one on the right was a survivor, but he was executed, and they filmed it. That's the father of the president with the MILFB Bansang Moro Basic Law Negotiator. That's the president's father, and they've been working with the Malaysians since 1983 or even earlier. Those are the different attempts to arrest or neutralize the bomb maker, and somehow he always get away. Now the retired officers, Filipino officers, made a manifesto the next day or a few days after, and they said they don't like the Bangsamoro. So it's the same thing. There you go. Then he requested $300 million aid. President Obama this time turned him down. And he's making an excuse that, oh, China is the one that we're going to use it for, but no money. Now, this is a pattern. Whether it's the war on terror or other wars, it's always the same. Here's World War II. These are the damage. I have to correct myself. I said Manila is the second most devastated Allied city. It's not true. Huh? Stalingrad is also very devastated, and Warsaw. This is what David Dugan was saying. The civilians were treated as prisoners of war. He filed a case against it, and that's the grandfather of the president or the father of Senator Ninoy Aquino in the center in the suit. He was working for the Japanese, and there were 51 Medal of Honor recipients who fought in the Philippines, defending and liberating the Philippines. 29 of them posthumously, and it's not even known. Okay, here's the psychological effects of the war on the Filipino psyche. So even as early as 1943, Manuel Quezon, then the president of the Commonwealth, was saying, we need those bases there permanently to guarantee the future peace in the Pacific. As president of the Commonwealth, that is his last will and testament. FDR and Quezon died, Truman and Osmeña replaced, so they did work towards the expansion of the military bases in the Philippines. They had 23 Navy and 13 Army sites in addition to Subic and Clark. But Osmeña lost and Manuel Rojas won, and things changed. When American High Commissioner Paul Malknat said, I want jurisdiction over American soldiers, sailors, and civilian employees, whether they're off or on base, on duty or off, that's when he went ballistic. Rojas objected. He said it's the issue of sovereignty.
Bienvenido.
Okay. That's why he was concerned. He was working for the Japanese. He was asked by Interior Secretary Aikis to explain. Now that's the on the right is the grandson of Benigno Aquino Sr. and the grandson of Rojas. He's running for president. The one Rojas is running for president next year. Uh, had we bought the Philippines again for 40 million, yeah, it'll be like Hawaii or be even better. And we keep throwing money away, throwing money away, throwing money away. And while the force remains poor. Okay, he's the first, Alexander Nininger is the first U.S. soldier to be awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously in World War II. And that's how we treat the veterans' grave in the Philippines. These, there are 51, and I came up with a partial list. Okay, closing statement. There you go. Spain brought Catholicism to the Philippines, and the Americans too brought Christianity. What I always notice, and this is every year, we talk about the crucifixion, but not about Demas and Hestas, who were the thieves. San Dimas became a saint because he repented and sought forgiveness. In the same way, both Peter and Judas betrayed Jesus. But Peter repented, Judas did not. And another lesson Jesus Christ gave is two commandments. You know, and the lawyer asked, "Who is your neighbor?" That he gave the parable of the good Samaritan. I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Bienvenido.
Thank you.
I've learned an enormous amount about the Philippines from Bienvenido's wise postings over the years. I read each and every one of them very carefully. One thing I wanted to ask you myself, what about Marcos?
Yes.
You never, if I never sent you criticize Marcos, Fernando Marcos, and his government. So, could you tell us a little bit about that?
You see, if Marcos is from the north, he's from the north, Ilocano, and there are a lot of Ilocanos here in the U.S. And chances are, if you say something wrong, there'll be a, they won't be nice to you. Um, Marcus martial law is good for the first 2 years until 1974. He has his faults. He never prepared for his the next guy to replace him. He sat on it uh, because one thing about him, he's the only president that was reelected. I mean, it's not fair there. Election is relatively speaking, election there are always kind of dirty.
Mm-hmm.
But he managed to be reelected. Yeah. So let me say, when how do you say this? His son is running for vice president, and everybody's now is running for vice president. Remember what I told you about getting the president elected and then knocking him or her down, and then the vice president.
Right, there's a vice president.
His son, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. is running for vice president. I don't know who's the president. So they're all in the game. His father, Marcos' father, was also a Japanese collaborator.
So he was also another part of that group.
They were one and the same. That's why I would rather have a freely associated state, and they will, they will take care of my ancestral land. We're not ready for self-rule.
We had Chiki and then Ed.
So a couple of things. I agree with you. I agree with you that a lot of people don't know about the so-called Indian wars in the Philippines.
Mhm.
There's a book that deals with that, which is the role of the American military. It wasn't the case that they came and everybody welcomed them, and so that's true. And we can debate about whether it was wise for the Philippines to become independent in 1945. My understanding is that people actually voted in favor of the Commonwealth. Knowing that this was you're saying there was no vote.
There was no.
That's different from saying that you think that the vote was corrupt or the people.
No.
You're saying there was no vote in favor of the Commonwealth.
No. There was no vote. For independence?
No, for the Commonwealth, for the establishment of the Commonwealth.
No, there
The
wasn't.
legislation that came through was not ratified by a vote.
No, there wasn't. The first one, the hair hose cutting law, provides that the Philippine Senate must ratify. So it was rejected by the Senate. Still, there was no referendum. Unlike when the 1973 Constitution, Marcos changed it, he did even bring referendum. There was.
Let me back up then. That's when you talk about a Senate and a House of Representatives in the Philippines in 1935.
32.
Did they get elected?
They were
Okay,
elected.
so these were the representatives of an electorate who then subscribed to it.
Yeah.
Again, it may have been a bad idea, but
No, no. My point is, last year, David Cameron, Prime Minister David Cameron, declared, asked for a referendum whether Scotland would like to be independent, and the people voted,
yeah.
not the Parliament of Scotland. That never happened in the Philippines in any way, in any instance. And
Edward.
I've read many of your postings on Wise and learned a lot from them. I've learned a lot more from your presentation.
thank you.
I'm curious about something. You seem to have a sort of quixotic desire to have the Philippines rejoined to the United States. And I'm wondering why in the world, given all of the problems that you have outlined, including holdovers of Japanese collaboration, and especially the Moros, why in the world would the United States want to rejoin the Philippines to itself? Other than having stewards on naval ships to serve coffee.
I'm not really a fan of the U.S. administration anymore because it changes. Like I told in one of my posts, had the Philippines stayed a U.S. territory, it would have same-sex marriage, federally funded abortion, and it'll be like bankrupt like Puerto Rico. Okay, Philippines now. I mean, I don't think they can handle two of them. The first two. I don't think they will agree. Now, as far as the Moros are concerned, if you will look at all these extremists, Muslim extremists, no Filipino Muslim has ever been involved in any suicide bombing. They don't do that. They would the ISIS, the one that executes, the one that chops head off, he turned out to be a Filipino. When Afghanistan fell, 80 Filipinos were hold over to Guantanamo. But they don't do suicide bombing. They don't. In fact, the Muslim preferred U.S. administration because they'd be fairly treated.
Anything, Tim Brown.
I want to make a couple of comments. If you would like to take notes, look at a book called The Valor of Ignorance by Homer Lee, who was an American.
Right, yeah, I've heard of that.
He couldn't get into the U.S. military and wound up being chief of staff of the Chinese Armed Forces. He projected the attack on Bin Laden on the Philippines to
8 weeks.
match almost to the foot
Yeah.
in the early 1900s.
1908.
1908 was the national
Yeah.
war. And I've often cited them because if you look at that and you look at the Spanish-American War, a lot of it was about the strategic location and importance of the Philippines as part of the world trade, which had already growing then very quickly. When you look at what the Chinese are doing, these strategies, the question then becomes, One was become national territory, and that obviously is being fought over by everybody. It's not Iraq, and it's the amount of economic zone that you obtain when you have Iraq, which is go high tide, because you get 200 miles of economic control all the way around it. That's why they're going to look at that. But in this case, you also look at the trade lines, the flocks and
Right,
I
yeah.
often say, you come to the Straits of Malacca, and the investment in the Pacific is passed through the South China Sea and goes
Exactly,
north to the South Sea.
exactly.
Because otherwise you go all the way south to Australia. And that was a major strategic value, both plus and minus to any rivalry in that part of the world. And that's one of our main reasons with the U.S. and we are crusaders about that. So the question of whether or not we put the bases back in the open, I think it's still open. Negotiating back and forth.
If my proposal to have a government in exile in London, based in London, is approved or recognized by major countries, they will be negotiating with you guys as far as the bases are concerned. With Cameron's, we will form.
I guess my point would be, and I think you're agreeing with me, I hope, is that the Philippines been a long ways in the West, and we may think of them as the place for the stewards, the remaining ships. Here, the truth is that it has major strategic importance to the United States, as well as to the
My
You know why
point,
they became stewards?
huh?
Let them become American citizens. That's what they enlisted for.
In the Compact of Free Association,
But in 1981, I think it was 81, they opened it up. Now you see Filipinos all over working on airplanes and regular jobs
Right.
in the military.
uh, first I would address the Homer Lee's book. MacArthur anticipated that too, but when the invasion came, it wasn't stopped at the beaches. And what they did are not telling up to now is that the torpedoes weren't working. In fact, in the Battle of Midway and the Coral Sea, no U.S. torpedo worked. It was then the U.S. Navy said there's something wrong with our torpedoes, and then they want to make sure what they're doing, so they sent a letter to Einstein. When Einstein saw it, he said, "Oh, I know what's wrong. See, when the torpedo hits the ship or the target, the front collapses and the brace holding the detonator will twist, pointing the detonator now will go this way. It won't explode." So that's why MacArthur did was hired that guy, the best PT boat captain. He also earned the Medal of Honor, and he knew that this guy would tell a story, and he's a U.S. Navy Academy graduate, but because of the budget cuts during the Great Depression, where money was diverted to the National Rehabilitation Administration,
National Recovery Act.
Recovery Act, he wasn't trained. He didn't have the exposure that he did, even though he was a graduate of the Naval Academy. And like I said, MacArthur is making a point. You should never let your defenses down.
I think we'll close here. Thank you, Bienvenido.